Well, I think when we are talking about transboundary water resources and the cases of conflict of cooperation, of course, justice is one topic, one concept that makes sense to talk about, although we are just starting to mobilize our intellectual capacities, let's put it that way, to understand how justice can be useful, not just as a theoretical concept, but also in terms of action. And I think this is the unique thing about this group, is that we are not just interested in academic discussion and debate, which we have during this week, but then that this is reflected in the work that we do in the different transboundary settings that we are working. So I think definitely is a concept that has value and that can be used. The question is that, as usual, there is a component of classifying concepts as good or bad, or saying something that we are working for justice, and I do have some problems with that. But in any case, I think definitely comes to enrich the debate that we already had about cooperation, and also about hegemony and water security. So this, let's say that this is one more layer of analytical tools that we have available. Well, we can observe injustice in different fields, and transboundary water management is of course not a different one. We know very well that transboundary water management, it's complex in the sense that usually it involves a lot of different countries that have vested interests in utilizing the water for their own national economies, and this is becoming problematic in the sense that there is a lack of international frameworks or even regional frameworks that could help the countries on the search for the equitable utilization of the water resources. I particularly work with the Nile River Basin, which is one of the river basins in the world that is considered to be a hotspot, in the sense that a lot of different conflicts, in particular diplomatic conflicts, were at stake during the last decades, although there is a process of cooperation going on. But we can say that the situation as it is now is characterized by injustice, in the sense that some use a lot of this water for their own national interests, but other countries have been prevented for using it. Although this is changing, and somehow in this workshop I'm trying to bring this idea that things are changing. What is unjust nowadays doesn't mean that we'll keep unjust in the future, because political changes might influence the way countries negotiate and then manage and allocate the water resources. And in the case of the Nile, we could say that it's becoming less unjust than it was before. So I think it's an interesting angle to look at it, to the hydropolitics of the Nile Basin. I think definitely power asymmetries are a characteristic of transboundary water management, and we are not just talking about Africa or the Middle East, but we could also use examples from Asia or Latin America, or even Europe or North America. The question is that power can be used for different purposes. Exactly like justice is not a concept that we can have a straight line or a black and white type of division between what is good and what is not good. The same goes for power. Power can be used, of course, for keeping a status quo situation that is not fair for all the countries or all the actors, but we can move ahead from that kind of analysis to understand that power is not static, so it's changing. And the political changes, of course, also are reflected in the water sector. One of the things that several authors of this group are constantly talking about is that conflicts, usually between countries sharing transboundary water resources, are not about water, are about something else, about economic interests, about political interests, about security issues. So we need to unpack all this to understand what is exactly the role of water, not just in terms of creating a, let's put it that way, transboundary justice in terms of water management, but also to understand how the situations change, and maybe some actors that are not our main concern might be the most affected. So if we say that a certain country that is now the less powerful one is building a certain infrastructure to benefit its own population, it might also have negative impacts, so unjust impacts for these local populations. And we need to be careful when analyzing that, the different levels or layers of justice, let's put it global level, regional level, national level, but also local level. I think the situation of hydro-hegemony, in a situation of hydro-hegemony in a particular transboundary river basin, is always a combination of different pillars of power, as we always insist to say that it's not just about geographical power, that is most likely the less relevant, but also material, bargaining and mediational power. But what we are constantly trying to remind and to include in our analysis, that is the bargaining and mediational powers. So at the level of negotiations, agenda setting, of dominating the discourse, that the unjust situation can be, let's say, maintained for a long period of time. So, but the other side of the coin is that the unjust situation can also be challenged or can also be addressed by challenge the sanctioned discourse and the sanctioned ideas that often are repeated by people, including these ones that are suffering from the injustice. So I would say that definitely is in the bargaining and mediational power, so at the level of agenda and ideas, that unjust forms of hydro-hegemony can be fight.